Yeah, good morning, fourth grade. So today I'm going to read you a nonfiction article that is called A Modern Day Dilemma. At what age should phones be allowed in school? So this is going to be kind of an argumentative text. So as we read this, I want you thinking of two things. Who is the intended audience? Like, who are they writing this story for? And then what is their claim? What are they claiming? And do they have evidence to prove it to be true? So we're going to find out as we read. This was released in 2016, so it's a little bit of an older article. It's certainly not unusual to see high school students talking and texting on their cell phones between classes or at lunch. But what about elementary school students too? Students in Montgomery County, Maryland's public elementary schools, could soon be allowed to bring cell phones and other electronic devices to campus under newly proposed rules. Students would not be able to use the devices during the school day in elementary schools unless a teacher permits them as a part of the classroom instruction. But students could use phones and tablets after dismissal or on school buses if the rules pass. The reality is they are in our elementaries now, said Patricia O'Neill, a county school board member, who noted that cell phones are commonplace in middle schools and high schools. She said the proposed change would largely focus on keeping up with the times. So then our first heading that we have here says using cell phones for safety or planning reasons. So maybe their first piece of evidence is we're going to need it because we have to have it to plan and for safety and things like that. Let's see if they have a valid point or not. The idea is part of a broader update to the district's regulations on personal mobile devices. The change could take effect as soon as the next school year. School board members discussed the change at a recent committee meeting. It requires approval from the superintendent who oversees the schools in a district. Parents often want districts to allow elementary students to carry cell phones, Ann Flynn, a director of education technology, said. Many parents want to stay in touch with their children for safety or for planning reasons. And I think some of us can connect to that. It's like sometimes as a parent, like if my kid had a phone, because my younger children do not, then it's easy to get a hold of them and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And it's easier to just really fast tell them what's going on instead of having to plan it out so soon. Schools around the country have their own rules for mobile devices. For example, elementary school students in Virginia are allowed to bring cell phones, but can use them only in emergencies. In Arlington, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., cell phone policies are up to the individual schools. And that's kind of how it is here in Texas, too. It just kind of depends on what school you're at and the principal's rules on if you can have the phone or if it has to be put up or if you can carry it in your pocket or whatever. Too much responsibility for 7-year-olds. So you notice right here, we now have a new heading. So this whole section right here is going to only talk about, is it too much of a responsibility? Let's find out. Since Montgomery aren't so sure, some in Montgomery aren't so sure about a rule change. Lisa Klein, a PTA leader in Maryland, said current practices are sufficient. What do you think sufficient might mean? Like it's good the way it is. Families are allowed to get special permission if a child needs to bring a cell phone to school. She worries about the effect cell phones could have on elementary school culture. To expect a child to turn it off and not touch it when it's in its backpack is a lot to ask of a 7-year-old. Do you agree with that? Do you think even at your age, like if you were allowed to have your phone at school but you're not allowed to touch it, like do you think that would be easy for you or do you think that would be kind of hard? I think it would be kind of hard for me. Paula Geller, president of the Countywide Council of PTAs, said he has heard parents voice concerns that cell phones could be a distraction in the classroom or a burden for teachers. Also, some worry that allowing cell phones could intensify the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So, like, I have a phone and you don't, and so I'm better than you or whatever it might be. All right, our next subtitle says, cell phones could help meet districts' technology needs. So some districts are in need of more technology, and some people are arguing that if kids could bring their cell phones, then it could help their technology. So let's see what they say about that. Geller said some parents might appreciate their children having cell phones when they walk home alone or take buses long distance. Others say cell phones, when used as part of a teacher's lesson plan, might help the district's technology needs. Catherine, who has taught first grade and third grade classes in Silver Spring, Maryland, said she doesn't support the idea. She believes it could add to the many responsibilities teachers already bear. I don't want to spend my time monitoring inappropriate cell phone usage when I could be using that time for instruction, she said. Carpella also questioned how devices would be secured. Most young students stow their belongings in cubbies or backpacks, not in lockers. So they're worried that they could, somebody would take them from them. Rules about appropriate use. School district administrators have proposed revisions to the district's regulation on personal mobile devices, which include phone, tablets, and laptops. The new regulation would include a number of rules about appropriate use. It would also have a requirement that students using their own devices at school access the internet through the district's network. This would limit exposure to potentially harmful sites. Because our school can regulate what you go on, they're saying if you bring your personal device, you have to connect to the Wi-Fi. But how can we even guarantee that kids do that? It would continue to allow high school students to use mobile devices during lunch. School board member Rebecca suggested extending lunchtime use to middle schoolers as well. She also said that the regulatory system does not aim to promote cell phones in elementary schools, but recognize their presence and provides guidance for their use. There also could be benefits for instruction at some point, she said. The next subtitle is "We Are Living in a Digital World." So they're trying to say, look, we live where technology is everything, and so we have to have it. More and more, as we're moving into a digital time, and digital instruction is becoming greater and greater. This allows teachers to take advantage of resources when possible. Sherwin Collette, the district's chief technology officer, said the update would mesh with a broader goal of allowing students to use their own devices to add to other technology used for classroom instruction. There is a benefit to the district as well, he said. Collette said district staff compared Montgomery with other school systems as they considered amending the regulation and underscored that cell phones already are coming into elementary schools. Schools work with their students and families around the ground rules about that, and they deal with issues of discipline that arise when one is stolen or comes out of the backpack when it shouldn't. Parents understand that the school system is not responsible for damage to them. So I think that would be a hard thing, because you want to blame somebody else if something's happened to your kid's phone at school, but it's really not the school's job to deal with that. Amanda, a researcher who studies teenagers and technology, found that on average, U.S. children get their first cell phone when they're about 10 years old, an age when children are in elementary school. I think parents wrestle with this a lot. What is the right age to give a child a cell phone? So, thinking about this argumentative text, who do we think the intended audience was? Who were they trying to argue their point to? Do you think they're arguing it to school people? Do you think they wrote this to argue it to like principals or teachers or students? Who do you think they wrote this article for? And then we obviously know their claim. They're claiming that phones could be beneficial at school for students.